All right, friends. So today's video is just going to be me complaining about the worst things about being a full-time author. These have been on my mind recently because I've honestly been going through this period of sort of struggling with my identity as an author. And that's sort of crazy to like think about or talk about just because I do this full time. It's how I make my living. I'm fairly successful at it. And so to think that such a core piece of my identity would be under siege is just kind of crazy. But it has been for the last maybe 2 months. And so I want to talk about a few of the problems that I've been struggling with, and then also how I am starting to address them. The first and probably worst thing is that so often our perception of ourselves as creatives is tied to other people's reactions to what we do. So when I release a book and I see the reviews or I see the sales ranking, if I see the, whether people are buying it or not, so much of my identity is wrapped up in how those people view me. When in reality, I'm not actually seeing an accurate representation of how they view me. And so if I'm, expecting to hit a certain rank and I don't hit it, or I'm expecting to get a certain number of reviews of a certain quality and I don't get them, or, somebody puts out a comment and is like, well, this one really didn't do it for me. I'm not super excited about reading the next one, or anything like that. All of those pieces of evidence, they either reinforce or they undercut some perception I have about myself. And rather than thinking to myself, okay, I'm actually a good writer, my books are getting better, and I'm having more fun writing them, and I'm being able to write them quicker, and I'm getting to write all of these stories that I have always loved to write, sometimes I just get fixated on like, oh, this random person didn't like this part of my book. So that must mean fill in the blank with whatever terrible thing I want to say about myself today. In reality, though, my perception of myself is not what is right. Like, it's not objectively true. It's just a perception. In the same way that my perception of other people is not necessarily objectively true either. And so learning to take feedback, take what people are saying, take the results that I'm getting, and look at them in the context of the entirety of my author career is something that I'm still working on doing. A lot of authors talk about how everything is sort of up and down in terms of how they feel about themselves. Being a writer is very much a roller coaster thing. Sometimes you're really ecstatic because you just did something amazing, and then the next day you just crash and you feel terrible about it. While it's true that that is what happens to a lot of writers, it doesn't have to happen. And I'm slowly learning that, I can temper my expectations. I can have a longer view. I can measure the gain instead of the gap. I don't have to take my thoughts about other people's perception about me as gospel. I can examine them critically and I can decide what's helpful and what's not, and I can move forward. There's a real danger as a creator in just sort of taking other people's opinions about what you do and just embracing them. And I know that I'm constantly preaching that we should be taking all the feedback we can get and we should be critically examining it and then moving forward based on it. And I still think that that is incredibly vital. But again, this is where that separation has to come in. The distance between what you do and who you are. And when I start taking what I do and making it who I am, things just start to look really bleak. Because what I do could always be better. I could always have a higher rank, I could always sell more books, I could always have a higher rating. But my rank, my rating, the number of books I've sold, they aren't who I am. And so recently I've been learning to keep that separation. The next thing that totally sucks about being an author is that it's hard to balance writing and other things. Because writing is such an intensely creative work that takes so much time and focus, it just has a way of eating all of your time. Even if you're not actively writing, you're thinking about writing. And when you're not thinking about writing, you're worrying about writing. And when you're not worrying about writing, you are writing. And it just turns into this vicious circle where more and more of your life just becomes about this thing, this book, this story, the thing that you're trying to communicate to the world. And that doesn't leave a lot of room for relationships with other people. It doesn't leave a lot of room for hobbies or things you enjoy. And so learning to balance that, I think, is really hard. It's a really tough skill to master, and I'm definitely still working on it. I am by no means perfect at it. And if anything, I err on the side of overwork, just doing too much, writing too fast, pushing myself too hard. But I am learning. I am learning how to set boundaries and how to guide myself through life without making writing my one and only thing. There are a lot of other things in life that are very important. Again, relationships, super important. Having hobbies or things that recharge you, super important. Writing is important as well, but it's not the end-all be-all. But as a writer, it can be really hard to balance that. And this is one place where we can really take a page out of the book of the great writers throughout history, most of whom set exact times when they would write and then didn't worry about writing any other time. And I think that if we can do that, if we can find that rhythm in our life, that's actually a fantastic thing. I know that's what I'm working towards writing in the morning and then being free and available to do other things in the afternoons or evenings. And then the final thing that really sucks about being an author is that it is just unbelievably stressful. The level of ambient stress that it brings is kind of ridiculous because there are so many things that are outside of your control. Yes, we write books. Yes, we are in charge of crafting those stories. But as soon as they leave our hands and they go to a publisher or they go out into the wider world, it's completely outside of our control. We don't determine whether somebody buys it. We don't determine whether somebody wants to read it. We don't determine whether somebody tells their friend about it. There's very little that we can control. And both the market and public interest are swinging wildly at all times. And so sometimes, a book comes out and we're expecting it to do well and then it doesn't do well. Or sometimes a book comes out and we're not expecting it to do well and then it crushes. And we have no control over that. And being in that place where there's no control produces just a tremendous amount of stress. I didn't have any white hairs in my beard or in my hair before I became a writer. And now it feels like new ones are appearing every single day. This is just a high stress job. And you have to sort of be okay with that if you want to be a full-time writer. Now, that doesn't mean there aren't ways to manage the stress. There certainly are. And I know I've done some videos on sustainability in writing. If you're interested in more videos like that, let me know down in the comments below. I gave a talk on it actually earlier this year in Ireland about how to write in a sustainable way. The incredible stress that comes with not having control over how the thing you're producing will perform is tremendous. And I think that anything that we can do to keep from burning out and to maintain a steady pace over the long term is just hugely helpful. What do you think about these three things? Are there other things that you think are frustrating about being a writer? If so, I'd love to hear about it. Anyway, until next time, I'll see you later.